Good evening, everyone. Yeah, it's good to know it's a special month, and we're celebrating 13 years of hard work, I'm sure, and can only imagine how many people have been able to benefit from this wonderful place, including me. So, okay. Today we're going to be talking about caring for the soul. Anybody here does that already? So no need for any additional information. Yeah, because of course we take a good care of the material side of our lives. I'm not going to say we take a good care of our bodies, but certainly we are here in this world which is full of challenges, and we, one way or the other, have to survive, right? However, we really want to stop and think about what we've been doing for our souls. Okay. We'll start with the big picture to kind of set up the scenery for what we're going to be covering today here. So Dalai Lama said, there's no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. That's very, very complicated, profound, maybe difficult to understand. Can you imagine somebody with no knowledge of, spiritism or spiritualism, no faith, trying to understand that? Even for us, it's kind of complicated to understand. There's no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. One way we can understand that, as we're going to cover here, is since we are spiritists, we can use Allan Kardec and all his books and other books to try to understand that. One thing we know is that we have been created with a destiny, which is happiness. And we are going to get there. Some are going to get there faster. Some are going to be a little late, but we all are destined to reach that point of happiness and live in a much better world. So another way to look at this is, what is happiness? Of course, we cannot try to define here what happiness is all about. We have this feeling that we know what happiness is, perhaps by making a contrast with unhappiness. So we certainly know when we are not happy, right? But do we know when we are happy? And that's where the complication starts, because we don't know what true and full happiness is. We can only have an idea, but we know one thing, that when we are happy, we are also pretty much in balance. Emotionally speaking, spiritually speaking, physically speaking, and we've been that way. We stayed in that situation for long enough for us to say, "Wow, today I'm happy." Well, of course, as we say here, as this Alicia Goldstein will tell us. But most of us struggle with finding this balance that we're talking about. We need to find this balance, which we're going to cover in more details later on. But we need to be balanced. We cannot be happy if we are out of balance. For example, out of faith, out of hope, or we are struggling to survive or something like that. So we need a balance to reach some level of happiness. And then this author goes on and says, often our minds hijack our moods. Here's important information here. The first one was about balance, that we're going to be talking a lot today, or equilibrium. The second one talks about our minds hijacking our moods. Well, what is mood? Mood is the way we feel, the kind of energy that we're going to transmit to others around us, and also what is going to determine how we're going to feel physically. Because depending on how we feel, depending on what our mood is, we're going to feel, I don't know, anxious, depressive, or happy, a lot of joy, right? And our minds are going to determine how our moods are going to be and how we're going to feel. So we need this guidance, to reach this balance, to have this flow of happiness most of the days, hopefully, right? And hopefully that's going to be deep, sustainable, and very practical and real. Looking into Kardec, he says in the question 614, Kardec asks the question about what is to be understood by natural law. And the spirits will say the natural law is the law of God, is the only true way for men to be happy, to reach that state of happiness. Okay, and here comes then the other piece that we want to talk more about. And he becomes unhappy only when he distances himself from such laws. So, in the slide before, we're talking about balance. In this slide here, we look into orientation from the spirits, and they say, well, if you want balance, if you want to be happy, then look at the laws of God and see how you were doing. And that throws us into a situation. Say, well, okay, I know the laws of God, but I'm still unhappy. Is that normal, or there's something wrong with me? Well, there's something wrong with you, or me, or all of us, if we're not happy, although we know the laws of God. And then, of course, there's several, passages in our gospel that will explain that. Knowing the law is not enough. We need to do better than that. We need to internalize them, live them, transform them into what we are. Andrew Powell is this author here. He's a very spiritualized person, living in England, and I got to know him through this English magazine, the Spiritist magazine, and he has a lot of things to tell us. He tries to link science and spiritualism. He could call himself a spiritist, but he doesn't. He says, never was the perspective of soul more needed. Let's go piece by piece here. What does he mean by that? Never was the perspective of soul more needed. What he's calling our attention to is it's time for change. It's time for us to look into life in a different way. We've been since God only knows when trying to settle our differences through wars, through criticism, through attacking one another, through bombing, through you know what I'm talking about. So more than ever, when the humanity seems to be out of balance, and of course more than ever, we need this different view, which is soul and not bodies, love and not hate. And then he goes on and say, we are all here as spiritual beings on a human journey. So that's not news to us. And then it goes, the problem is that we haven't yet learned how to stop acting on the impulse of ego and listen more to our souls. So we have not yet learned how to live our true life, the life of the soul, the life that is here for a specific purpose. That's it's very, very clear in the first commandment of God to love one another and love God above all. So that commandment is not there yet for the most part of humanity. So when are we going to stop to look into the material world and look into our souls and collectively, humanity as a group of incarnated spirits that are here to work together, to progress together, to help each other. So, let's take another look at that from a different angle. Somebody might say, well, it's not as simple as that. That's right, it's not as simple. It's very complicated. To start with, we are complicated, aren't we? We are complex creatures. For example, we have one side of us, we have our spiritual side, which is we are spirits, and not only that, we are eternal spirits. We are Son of God, brother under Jesus, and we are eternal. That really, if we could stop there for a minute and say, oh, meaning what? I'm not going to die. My life is going to go on. And I don't want to be in my next stage in the same situation I am right now. I hear that God is very just. I hear everything about the law of action and reaction. I hear about God's justice. And why am I so hooked to this world? Okay, so that's one way I look at it. And then you go on and say, and by the way, we are all work in progress. We are all imperfect people. And it's funny to look at this way, but we are imperfect people trying to help imperfect people, or at the higher level, try to be the president, the governors, and the legislators of imperfect people when we are imperfect. And some of them are more imperfect than the others. So we are listening to this, all this new news in the radio or TV that, for example, when they talk about this abortion law, right? So there's this discussion between whether or not to allow abortion in the 20s, after 20 or 23 or 25 weeks. So what is that all about? When life starts at the conception. So, and then I have to take into account that as the spirits, we are subject to influence. And that's something that we overlook a lot, or maybe most of the times. For example, we are here, we are not hearing or seeing anybody else, right? But they are here, the spirits, the good, the ones that are here to learn, the ones that are here to influence us in a positive way. And then there are those that are here to maybe to influence us the wrong way, or waiting for us right outside the door. And then there are those that are influencing or trying to influence, those that make legislation, those that make decisions about war versus peace. The other day in the NPR was saying that over the last 3,200 years, we have had only 240 days of peace, globally speaking. Right? So, but we are here in this world, which is not a perfect world. All we need to do is to realize that we're all imperfect people. And therefore, we need to understand how we're going to deal with that. What is our best position in front of that information? Well, of course, Kardec said that we were eternal spirits, work in progress, subject to influence and all that, and we are born here. We need to reborn and then born again and again and again and again. It's always progressing, and that is the law. No way can escape that law. I like to say that we are going to be reincarnating here, except for the fact that there's this planetary transition, so let's put that aside for a minute, but we are going to reincarnate and keep reincarnating until the day or the life we find the path left by Jesus for us to follow. And then we're going to follow that path, and that's going to be when we're going to be released from reincarnating again. And his path is very clear. It's to be found by everyone. On the other side of us, we are here in this material, call it envelope, whatever you want, vehicle, right? It's flesh and blood. It's very, very sophisticated, I can tell you that. But it's still material. And because we are kind of locked or trapped into this material vehicle, we lose a lot of capabilities that are only available or are natural, let's put this way, to spirits. For example, I can only see with my 2 eyes here from my body, while spirits can see 360 degrees around him, and not just through the eyes. Now, spirits can hear what you or can see what you're thinking, right? Depending on which spirit we're talking about. But we are here, and we are here to go through our trials and expiations. Because up until this point, and very unfortunately, we only learn, or most of us, of course. And when I say most of us, not in this room, but in this world, most of us can only learn through the pain. Very little of us can learn through love. Swedenborg, an interesting figure, he was on Earth as a human, just like us, something like 100 years before Kardec. And he wrote most of the stuff that Kardec wrote 100 years later. He left 12 volumes, 12 books. And then he came back as part of the team that wrote through Kardec. And you're going to find his name in the Gospel, for example. And he says, the earth is like the laboratory that will perfect. It's the laboratory where the material perfects the spiritual. It is also part of the law that it is here, or in an equivalent world, where we're going to progress, it's almost like going back there to take lessons, and also, of course, to pay our duties over there, depending on what kind of a life you had here, what you're living, what you deserve after death. But at the end, you were sent back here, because here is the way God wants us to know or to learn how to love each other. And love is what we need. So, we were just talking about being eternal, being a spirit, and being a body as well, living in this world, living in a spiritual world at the same time. And that's overwhelming sometimes. And we live in a very overwhelming context. even if you are rich, even if you have a lot of money, a lot of goods, if you're wealthy, still live in a very complicated context, very overwhelming. And like this guy here. So we say here, life on earth is expected to confront us with the trials that will make us grow and transform ourselves into better spirits. Okay. So we should not be here expecting anything but challenges. Right? And that's, when we're talking about caring for the soul, it's a very, very important information to take into account. Not that you don't know that. Everybody knows that here. But the thing is, sometimes, do I forget about that sometimes? Do I take that into account most of the times? That we are not on vacation here. This is not a happy world. This is the school for people like me. Okay, so Emmanuel then clarifies that to us. Emmanuel tells us that life will make us recapitulate the instances that will, at the right time, test our preparedness to address them, to address such conditions, such instances. It's very interesting sentence from Emmanuel. Because, we come over here with an agenda, something we're going to have to go through, to learn from, and hopefully come out of that like a winner, meaning, okay, I passed the test, no longer subject to that kind of a evil, that used to reside on me. Whether that's addiction or lack of humility, whatever that is, life will take care that it's gonna. If you can imagine life unfolding, at some point you're gonna be tested like never before in regard to something, like the loss of somebody you love a lot. Okay, doesn't have to be a death, just a loss. In that moment, you're being tested. Now, the important thing to know also is we had enough time to prepare ourselves for that particular moment in our trial or expiation. We can prepare ourselves, or you can just say, or just do nothing. When time comes, you are not going to be prepared, and you're going to be desperate. You're going to lose your faith, perhaps lose your life. So that's a very overwhelming context that I'm saying here. We need to understand how those things work. So wouldn't it be nice if we had a break, freedom from all of this? No? Too much complexity, too much trials, too much of this or too many of that. Well, yes. And the good thing is we can actually get freedom. You can get to a point where you can sleep at night. You can get to a point where you're not offended anymore. You can get a point where you can feel okay with your trials, understanding that they bring in a lesson to you. So, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, I think everybody knows him, right? Okay. He said, I know but one freedom, and that is the freedom of the mind. So, I know there is the only freedom that I know is the freedom of the mind. Okay, in a second. Okay. So remember at the beginning we're talking about living in balance. We need emotional balance, spiritual balance, and we need physical balance. so that we can feel good. If you are not, for example, emotionally stable, you cannot feel good. And more likely, you're going to say, I'm unhappy. Well, here is in this triangle, here we have thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. And they have these arrows that runs both ways, and they're all interconnected. Okay? And we say, well, instead of me saying, let's see what Gandhi said. He said, happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. So you live a life true to yourself. Your consciousness is okay. And your behaviors reflect what you think, what your beliefs are. Because our behaviors reflect what we believe in. So if you believe in drugs, that's your belief. And then you do what? You try it. You do it. You use it. If you believe in charity, that's a belief. You do what? You're going to come to a place like this or many other places to try and help some people. Our thoughts, though, they are in command through our mind. Whatever we think, we become. And that's actually what's in the next. Well, it's not yet. But then you say, well, okay, I like this idea of freedom. You know, how do I get some of that? I need some freedom. Yeah, you're right. Okay. Well, there's many ways to say this here. Every author will have different words. But just to honor the two ladies that came all the way from Brazil a couple of weeks ago for the symposium that we had here in Port St. Lucie, I guess. You need this. It comes from education before anything else. Comes from education. And how you get that education? The education you have to go through 4 steps. One is knowledge. You need to know what, for example, the laws are, the law of God. Then you need to go through, you need to understand what they mean to you and to the rest of the world. You need to reflect on them. Think about, as I'm speaking here, that famous, know the truth and the truth will save you. So, knowing the truth is knowing the truth of life. Understanding it is how it works under God's law. But then you're only halfway through. So now that I got to know there's a law of God, and then I understand what it means, it makes all the sense of the world, and now you need to do what? To practice those laws. For example, charity. Not in this center, another center that says, charity, without charity there's no salvation. Okay, so that's one law, or a subset of a law. And how do I do that? Knowing that alone is not enough, so we have to practice that. And with practice, you change, even if you don't want. As long as you keep practicing, you're going to end up changing for the better in this case. Okay. As we said, blame it all on your thoughts. Okay? So since you cannot stop thinking, so we might as well have some control of it, right? And you don't want to stop thinking, do you? Because the way we stop thinking, things are going to go, what's going to happen to you? There's I think Descartes that said, I think, therefore I am, I exist. So, now that you know you cannot stop thinking, let's keep in mind that we are what we think in a way that's consistent. So if you consistently think that you are a good spiritist, a good disciple of Jesus, then chances are you're going to become it. And then somebody said, there is nothing in this world that can trouble you more than your own thoughts. When you stop and think about it, nobody can get anxious or over-anxious without thinking about something, without thinking about it. Nobody can be happy without having the blessing or being under control of your thoughts. So whatever happens to you, whatever sentiments, whatever feelings you're going to go through, you're going to have, you're going to experiment, will first come from your thoughts. And we are using more of a strict vocabulary here, right? So we know our thoughts come from our spirit. Okay, so then we need our mind or our thoughts. Need this machine to process it all. It's called the brains, right? So again, let's forget about it. Let's not try to be very technical here, so we can focus on what's important. But inside this head here, we have our conscious mind, which is the rational and the emotional, is the piece of our brains that allows us to think. Right? So if you're thinking about what I'm doing here right now, what I'm saying, then you are using your conscious mind. Then there's the unconscious part of our mind, where we have instincts, we have sensations, virtues. It's in our unconscious part. And information very important to this here is, that's where our baggage sits. What baggage? The baggage that we accumulated over so many incarnations before this one. So you were no longer that kind of a character that lived in a cave that would react in a given way. You are who you are today through a process of self-actualization of your mind, your spirit. And all that information is not waiting for you when you go back to the spiritual world. It's right here. Except that God decided that we don't come in reincarnation with knowledge from the past. But it's there. And it's going to follow us. It's in our spirit. It's going to follow us until that baggage is clean. Right? And because of that, it must tell us we are born with psychological wounds. What does that mean? We bring from the past problems we had before. So let's say we were a very arrogant person. You're not going to get in here being the opposite of arrogance. You're going to be that same arrogant person. And you are here to work on that. So that's why we are all different. If we were all to start from zero, we would most all of us would think the same way, would be the same level of arrogance or humility or whatever. But no, we have our baggage in our unconscious part. But the unconscious part, although it's unconscious to us, it communicates through its own ways, means with our conscious part. Okay, so then when we say, I need to work on my inner transformation, it's not, you're not talking about, working on the conscious part of your mind. You're operating, if you're thinking about the computer, there's this operating memory here, okay, that changes all the time. This time is this, and 1 minute later is Google, the other one is Wikipedia. So no, you have to work on your baggage, on the part that is kind of hidden from you. And if we go back to that slide that we had before, knowledge, and then comes a point here, it's practice and change. By practicing, you are changing the way your baggage is structured, and then you become the new person. So what we need to do is work here in our consciousness, in our day-to-day, by being vigilant, by being serious about changing what we think we need to change, being honest by recognizing that we do have certain things that need change. If we are here, it's because we are imperfect, and we cannot say, well, I don't know what I'm doing here. There's nothing I need to change about myself. There must be something in there. And then you work there and you save it here. And then that way you're going to be self-actualizing yourself, your mind, your spirit, in such a way that when you come back here, you're going to start from here and no longer here. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. There's one little thing that gets in the way. It's probably one of the smallest word in the dictionary, but the biggest trouble to all of us, called ego. The ego is that part of mind that mediates between the conscious and the unconscious and is responsible for the reality testing and the sense of personal identity. This is from a dictionary. In this little ego, the problem is that ego can convert anything to its own use, even spirituality. What does that mean? Our ego is our filter, is where we hide from our true self and create that self that is more attractive, more appealing to us. Let's say that has all the arrogance or all the defense modes or that you need to survive, given your views of the world, your views of life. And the ego has this power when if you're not a believer in God, somebody comes and talks to you about God, immediately the egos throw that away. Because it's something that you don't want to know about. It's interesting when you go through, when you're studying the book of mediums, and then there's I don't know how many, 8, 9, 10 different categories of non-believers, right? And the one that's very interesting to use in a setting like this is the person that is very materialistic, or has been very materialistic, and all he wants to know is about money. But then he starts to question and whether or not there is a God. So he's in the right place to perhaps investigate and become a better person. What is going to happen to him? He is going to deny himself, because the minute he accepts that there might be a God, he will have to change. He cannot be the same person he is, and that's not acceptable to him. So our ego is our enemy, but we all have them. The alternative is to become friends with our ego. Work with the ego. We control it. Okay. So Albert Einstein said ego equals 1 divided by knowledge. The 1 divided by knowledge, if knowledge is bigger than 1, then you're going to get into a fraction here, right? Point something. The bigger the knowledge, the smallest the fraction or your ego. Meaning, if you're not interested in Jesus, if you're not interested in reincarnation, in Kardec, or this or that, if you're not interested in anything but your ego, that knowledge is going to stay small enough to maintain a big ego. The key here is not to learn how to do the math. The key here is to know that the bigger our knowledge, the lesser our ego. Right? Well, everything starts with a good foundation. This one here, for example, is a wonderful way to look into the foundation of how we think, how we manage our life, how we take care of our souls, and so on. There was this thing from Jesus, according to Matthew, that says, "Therefore, whoever hears these sayings," and this is Jesus speaking, "of mine, and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house on the rock." Okay, so, and then of course that compares to building your house, in this case here, by, on a sand, by the ocean, and you put in there the best of you from an ego standpoint, right? All your plans, all your fantasies, and comes one day, the tide is too high, and your plans, your visions, your ego gets vanished, goes away. But if you have your plans built in a solid place, it's going to survive. It's like Kardec saying, the best faith is the one that will challenge every reality. It's going to survive everything. So, we're talking about that guy that says, "Oh, I don't need to change." Okay. So that means what? If we don't need to change, it's probably because we're happy with what we've got. Right? I hope we can say that. But it's very difficult to think or conceive of anybody that can say, "I don't need to change." Let's start with what Carl Jung said. "I'm not what happened to me, but I am what I choose to become." That alone put us to think a lot about who we are today. Who are we? In the sense of, am I in the place that I want to be? Am I the person that I designed, that I planned it, that I wanted to be? Even considering everything that I've been studying about Jesus and God and life and the good spirits. Because, of course, we have this tendency to say, "Oh, the way I've been raised is to be blamed for who I am." Okay. That has something to do with it. From a pure psychological standpoint, if you forget about religion, or Spiritism, you're being raised in a given way, and your mom and dad used to beat you every day, so then you're going to become insecure, aggressive, and a bunch of other things that you don't like it to be. However, you've been born in a place that was right for you. for you to face what you needed to face. It comes to a point where those that are going to be able to say, I've learned and I change it, are the ones that are going to be able to say, okay, check the box, I'm ready to go. Because we are the only responsibles for our happiness and our destiny. It's not easy. Nobody's saying here, wow. I guess he's trying to tell me that it's a matter of a small decision and I can start tomorrow. No, it's not easy. It's difficult. That's why we have thousands of incarnations, because one incarnation is sometimes not enough for us to move the needle. Yes, but it is possible, what I choose to become. And then, of course, there's this other lady that says, can you remember who you were before the world told you who you should be? That is, I only put that in there because one of the things that we need to be very conscious about is we are what we think, but what we think may be highly influenced by the context in which we live, unless you develop this ability to become vigilant and through learning, through knowledge, through studying, understand what is good for you and what's not good for you. Okay. So, kind of a finalizer here, it's not the load that breaks you down, but it's the way you carry it. It sounds like it's almost, it put us down a little bit, right? So the way you've been carrying your load is causing you all the trouble that you're going through. But we need to face up to that. We need to say, okay, what does it mean? Let me understand that. The best thing for us is to be open. If you hear something here in this podium, from this podium, that it's not right for you, just forget about it. Come up with other sources. Go study somebody else. Find your way. That's what we are here for. So, and then we come to this balance between the spirit, mind, and body, which is going to bring us in the intersection of the three, the peace of mind. We're not even going to call it happiness, because we don't know what happiness is. We've never been there. But you can certainly have a feeling, a good feeling for when you are going through a time where there's peace of mind, there's tranquility, there's serenity, there's something that's constant, it's not so turbulent. And that comes when you reach this balance between your spiritual life, the way you think, everything you learned, all the progress you made. Remember, work here, save here, working on the things that you need to work on. And of course, keeping your body functioning. So with that, just one important one here, if I have time. Your greatness is revealed not by the lights that shine upon you, but by the light that shines within you. And let's quickly go through this. So let our values be the light shining within us and shining upon those we love. How we do that? Let our light shining within us and shining upon those we love. Well, that light is called, one of them, humility. We all love humble people. Altruistic people, those that are here to help us, to do charity, they can become examples to others. Little ego, big soul. The bigger the ego, remember that equation. Compassionate. Let's see each other as somebody that is in a similar situation as I am, needing understanding, needing validation, needing love. Right? And then let's be free to be and free to love. Don't find yourself entrapped in this world, because this is a world of challenges, of trials and expiations. Let's be free and let's love. With this, have a great week. Thank you. Thank you.